right, guys, Shawn right here from Muscular Development Unleashed, Part 3. This is the segment where we're talking about who do I think, personally, is the best and greatest Mr. Olympia of all time. Now, mind you, the Mr. Olympia competition started in 1965 with the first champion, Larry Scott. That just so happened to be the very year I was born. And Larry Scott would repeat in 1966. He'd give way to the 1967 champion, the Myth, Sergio Oliva, who would go on to win 3 consecutive titles before Arnold Schwarzenegger would be our third Mr. Olympia. And he would pick that title up in 1970 and hold on to it for 6 long years. Then in 77, I should say, or 76, Franco Columbu would win the Mr. Olympia championships, and he'd be followed by 3-time Mr. Olympia Frank Zane. Frank Zane was known for his classic lines, his great detail, his athletic classic physique, and he'd hold on to that title from 77 till 1979. Then Arnold Schwarzenegger would come out of retirement, and he would win his 7th Mr. Olympia, all before his training partner Franco Columbu would come back and win it in 1981. In 1982, the oldest Mr. Olympia at that time would be 43-year-old Chris Dickerson, standing a mere 5'5", maybe 190 pounds. 1983, the Lion of Lebanon, Samir Banu, would win that title once and only once, and that was the year I started bodybuilding. And ushered in 1984, when I graduated high school, Lee Haney. He would go on to win 8 consecutive Mr. Olympias, one more than Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then he would retire in 1991, leaving the door open for 1992, where the Shadow, Dorian Yates, would come to rattle off 6 consecutive titles until 1997, retiring due to injury, leaving the door wide open in 1998. And from the back of the pack in 1997, in 9th place, Ronnie Coleman would leapfrog over a bunch of future Hall of Fame bodybuilders in 1998 to run off 8 consecutive titles before being upset by Jay Cutler in, I believe, 2006. Jay would go on to win a couple of Olympia titles. He would lose in 2008 to Dexter the Blade Jackson, but he would recover in 2009 to win his 4th Mr. Olympia title. He would be succeeded by his good friend and currently 5-time Mr. Olympia, Phil Heath. Phil Heath was number 13, and that's how many Olympia champions we've had in the last 52 years. This September will leave the door open to usher in either a new Mr. Olympia, or Phil Heath would go on to win his 6th consecutive Olympia title, tying him with Dorian Yates, leaving him in the company of Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ronnie Coleman, and Lee Haney on his way to a record-breaking number 9 if he stays healthy. So with that being said, we've got 13 champions that we can talk about. There's something to be said for being number 1, the first. Larry Scott, while he won the Mr. Olympia in 1995, was better than the rest. He didn't embody overall, I'm talking about through the years, through the generations, and the decades. There were some things that Larry Scott needs to be in that lineup. If you stand all of those 13 Olympia titles, champions, together, my obvious attention is going to go over towards Lee Haney, because Lee Haney in 1991 was arguably better than he was in my first Olympia in 1998, which is where I thought he was at his all-time best. Lee Haney, a little bit top-heavy, didn't have the best calves, certainly didn't have the greatest hamstrings. Of his time, he did. I believe he had better hamstrings and better legs than a lot of the bodybuilders prior to him actually winning the Olympia. But the knock on Lee Haney was his arms weren't really freaky enough, I should say. They just were not on that caliber of a Robbie Robinson or even an Arnold Schwarzenegger, for that matter. But this is a very tough one for me, you guys, to get my arms around who's the best. But I'm going to have to say, for what he did, when he did it, and the style in which he did it, we got to stay with Arnold Schwarzenegger as the greatest Mr. Olympia ever. I mean, because he, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, or like, I should say, Muhammad Ali, like Bruce Lee, like Michael Jordan, the things that he did in the sport were great. They were phenomenal for their time, but it transcended his sport. His personality, his contribution, his legacy went way beyond what he did on that stage to encompass and bring in so many more thousands, if not millions of people to take another look at what's happening in the world of bodybuilding and fitness. And for that, I give him a little bit more credibility than the accomplishments of the game changer, Dorian Yates, of the evolution of a Ronnie Coleman. Remember, Ronnie Coleman's been a good 5 or 6 years at the back of the pack of the Mr. Olympia to leapfrog over everybody, a bunch of Hall of Fame bodybuilders, to win and rattle off 8 consecutive Mr. Olympia titles. It was unheard of, and that in and of itself is noteworthy. But there are some things in the process that we can kind of pick apart. I mean, Ronnie, his first Mr. Olympia, he had a little tad touch of gyno. You've got to mark that down. Towards the end, he had a torn lat, had a torn tricep, stomach distension, lost the very things that got him there, the sharpness, the crispness. I believe if we take the Ronnie Coleman's condition of 1998 and we match it with the size that he brought in 2000, we have a superhuman bodybuilder that could never be beat. But Ronnie brought many different looks and many different colors to those 8 consecutive Mr. Olympias. Arguably for me, 1998, I was more impressed than any other Mr. Olympia because really he was very alien-like. The condition was out of this world. But they were glimpses of a physique that was evolving and changing, some for the better, some for the worse. 2001, when he won the Arnold Classic, he'd streamlined his physique, came back and won the Mr. Olympia against Jay Cutler, and that was very controversial. Jay Cutler on the diuretics then, he failed that test. Could have been Mr. Olympia in 2001, and Ronnie could have been upset. I believe it was in 2002 against Kevin Levrone, so there was a couple of times he could have been beat. But the one thing that stands clear in my choice and selection of Arnold Schwarzenegger, in spite of everything and everyone that he competed against, he was always head and shoulders above the competition. In 1980, one of the more controversial Mr. Olympia calls that people complain about all day long, they said Arnold just wasn't the same Arnold. But even though he wasn't the same Arnold, the way that we've seen him the previous 6 Mr. Olympia victories, he still was head and shoulders above the competition. A lot of people forget that while there was Screaming Mike Mincer, who fell like in 5th place, it was Chris Dickerson that was 2nd place to Arnold. And there was absolutely no way on Chris's very best day that he was going to beat a sub-conditioned, a sub-beefed-up Arnold Schwarzenegger. He just had too many things that he could display that would detract from his weaknesses. So, in conclusion, Phil Heath with all of his gifts, Samir Banu with all of his completeness. I mean, he was phenomenal in 1983. Franco Columbu was not Mr. Olympia worthy, I didn't think. As a matter of fact, out of all of the Olympia winners, I would have Franco way down on the bottom of the list. I believe Larry Scott would probably take Franco Columbu out. There are some beautiful things to be said about Sergio Oliva. He just didn't compete against enough competition when he was winning. But Arnold Schwarzenegger, in light of the things that he did with the title, the things that we'd never seen prior to him winning the Mr. Olympia, the charisma, the performance, the aura, the super mega stardom in terms of what he did with his career as an actor and as a politician, we just cannot take away that it all came and stemmed from his commitment to bodybuilding. Lee Haney, with his 8 Mr. Olympia titles, just beating up and beating down those bodybuilders that were chasing him and on his heels. He only had to stand against 2 really legitimate threats that were really tall and shoulder to shoulder. And that first threat never materialized in the form of Gary Strydom in 1988. It didn't come from Barry DeMay, who wound up in 3rd place in 1988. And it certainly didn't come from Dorian Yates in 1991, because I had Lee Haney in a landslide victory there. He retired and Dorian blossomed. When Dorian was competing, there's a few titles in there that could have gone to Flex, to myself, to Kevin Levrone. Ronnie Coleman, I believe he could have been beaten in 2001 by Jay Cutler. He could have been beaten by Kevin Levrone in 2002. The one thing that I cannot sit here and say is that Arnold Schwarzenegger should have been beaten in any of those Mr. Olympia titles that he chased. And he won them in grand fashion, and he represented in grand style. For that very reason, coming up on this Mr. Olympia weekend, I've got Arnold Schwarzenegger as my greatest bodybuilder of all time. I'm Shawn Ray for Unleashed here at MuscularDevelopment.com.